Hey guys, welcome back to FreeCAD tutorial series part 2. So in this one we're going to kind of get into more workbenches and what they involve. We're going to start with part design. It's a fairly simplistic one. We'll probably make our way mostly through sketches and then just kind of end on creating the basic part or the pad. And then part 3 will end up being over different things like revolves, polar arrays, things like that. That'll be very handy. So let's get started. If you didn't watch my previous video, when you start up FreeCAD, this is the start one. There's different kinds of examples and analysis right there that may become handy to you. If you want to do that, that's up to you. But we're going to move into part design. So here's part design. Here you got, FreeCAD Start Center. It's kind of boring and stuff. Model. You want to stay on model, so get used to this kind of tree view here. You'll have all your different objects set up for it, and the view and data of the individual objects and stuff. So you'll see that. Let's start a file. So that's the most important thing, is you can't really do anything without starting a file. So we started one. And these are the various separate tools. Now you see some of them are grayed out and you haven't been able to use them yet. These are mainly in the Sketcher workbench, and whenever you create a sketch, which is kind of like a 2D version of your part, or say, that you end up extruding to make the full part, you'll find that these a lot more handier than what they are right now. In fact, this whole workbench would be useless without these at all. These right here, we'll get into those at a later date. They're not as useful, but they can be used. So let's get started on a sketch. So click here on this icon, has a circle and a square in it. I apologize if you can't see the icons. I know sometimes maybe on a cell phone or something. I guess try your best to look. I tried to make the icons as big as I could. So we created a sketch. We'll close that. We'll delete that. Alright, so you create a sketch and you can choose your plane. So XY, XZ, YZ, reverse the direction of it, and you can kind of see where on the cube here, where that is. We'll start with the XY plane. Makes the most sense. We learned a lot of that in algebra, right? And then you could choose the offset, how far offset it is. That could become very handy at some point, but we'll just do a plain XY plane. So if you don't know what the Sketcher workbench looks like, you'll see that as well. If we can find it here. Right there. This is basically it right here. So the part design has the Sketcher workbench kind of nested into it. You can use it separately if you want, if you have another specific reason. Well, actually you would have a specific reason for it. I'll get that into later. So here we have create a line, create a point, create an arc, different versions of that, circle, polyline, rectangular array, polygon, and slot. So, and then we can create a fillet, trim an edge, create an edge linked to an external geometry. So we're going to try to get through most of these as much as I can. So let's start with create a line. So we got a bunch of lines. Sweet. We'll do kind of an arc here. That'll be nice. Now we do a polyline. So that's what a polyline does, is it's just connects these dots together and automatically constrains them, which is very nice. And the part design workbench, when you go into Sketcher, you'll see the individual elements. You can click on them, they'll highlight green. You can right click, delete. You can kind of change things around a little bit, which is very nice. Here's the constraints. I believe you can change the constraints automatically in here. Whenever you get to like right here, it's grayed out right now, but change value. So you can, if it's like a length constraint, you could change the value of the length constraint, which is very nice. So right there. So we got lines, we got an arc. We'll add these in later on. So let's look at some of the constraints we can do. One of the things that people forget about is double click on 2 points, and these are all your constraints here, but this coincident constraint puts those 2 lines together. We'll do that a bunch of times. Now when this thing is fully constrained, you will see that this object will, or rather this sketch will become green. Now here it's shown we are under constrained sketch with 21 degrees of freedom. So we have a lot of things to work on to make this fully constrained in what it is. Make sure to use that coincident constraint, by the way. So we click on that. Oh wait, hey, our constraints come back up again. That's really nice, isn't it? Fix the radius with circle of an arc. So, you know, heck, we'll change it to 40. 40 degrees radius. And we can insert lengths. We're just going to kind of keep it where it's at. So, here. Just to go over kind of the constraints real quick. This is fix a point onto an object. So a vertical constraint. So if I wanted to make a line vertical, boom, right there. If I wanted to create a line horizontally, boom. If I wanted 2 lines to be perpendicular to each other or parallel to each other, that's the one right there. For instance, between here and here, we want a perpendicular constraint. There. And we want these 2 lines to be parallel. Here's a parallel constraint. So that's kind of the idea behind sketches and the Sketcher Workbench, is that you create these lines, you make a general shape, and then you modify the shape with constraints. So FreeCAD loves its constraints. That's one thing about FreeCAD that it absolutely loves about itself, is constraints. So if you mess that up, you're going to have problems whenever you try to extrude it and create an actual object in 3D space. If I wanted to create an angle between 2 lines, I could do that. Maybe I want it at 150 degrees. If I want the overall length of something to be 85 millimeters, there it is. Now we're bound down to 12 degrees of freedom, so we still have a lot of things to go. Another quick way of doing lots of 12 degrees of freedom, or testing out degrees of freedom if you just can't figure out where it's at, is you can actually left click on some of this stuff and move it around. It's very nice. For those of you who don't know, we'll close this out real quick. We'll go back into it in a sec. Navigation styles, you can change your navigation around. When you go into Sketcher and use CAD, it's the handiest of all. It's a pain if you don't use that. So very nice. So we can change that around, right? So maybe we want to change that. We'll fix a length to it. Oh, messed up there. Okay, now we're down to 11 degrees of freedom. We'll change the lengths around. So, for those of you that are familiar with machine design and stuff, you can create, let's say, a 4-bar mechanism or a piston cylinder mechanism, and you can constrain it. And, for instance, you can kind of see where that kind of is heading. You can constrain it to certain lengths and certain degrees and angles, and you can find out the entire geometry. I bet there is a way through the Python console that you can do position, velocity, acceleration graphs within the Sketcher Workbench, which is really cool. We'll move forward though, because that's not what we're really here for. So I'm just, I could change these two. I could double click on them. I could change them if I wanted to. Actually, here I could even change them if I wanted to. Change value. So a little bit handier how it's set right now. So, oh, messed up. Six degrees of freedom. Oh, that brought it down to 5. That was pretty quick. That's nice. So, if you guys don't know what degrees of freedom are, you might want to research it online. It's it's basically what ways something can actually move. Okay, so our degrees of freedom, you can kind of tell it's more like in this direction right here. Go ahead and constrain that length. There you go. So maybe we want to constrain that to that. This is a very, very oddball and random shape. I don't foresee someone using this for any real purpose, but hey, if you wanted to, that's fine. Alright, so we have 1 degree of freedom left, and it just happens to be the first thing I clicked here, this length. So we just click here, we do a length, there you go. See, now it's fully green and fully constrained. If you have a part already created you can do this, create an edge link to an external geometry. So you can basically just click on the external part and you can create your sketch around that. Another big thing about part design is you design a part. If you do a polar array and things are in a polar pattern and not attached to each other, basically it goes all null and void. That's basically most of what you're going to find in a Sketcher workbench. We'll move forward into different things, involvements, along in a later video, or more referring to just part 3. So we'll get into, oh hey, there's a slot, this. We'll do polar patterns with it and you can kind of see how it's working. It's very, very, very nice. So sketch, we're going to pat it, and that's how we extrude, right there. We're going to extrude it to whatever we want. You can reverse it onto the plane, symmetric to the plane. I'll just keep it how it is for the time being. Dimension 135 millimeters. So pretty cool. We're going to go to pad. Now here are the different values and different parameters. We can actually change these around. If I wanted to change that to like, I can make it thicker. We can also edit the sketch, for instance. If we want to edit that for some reason, yeah. So 120. Oop. So 180. So it's definitely invalid in some way. It's because it's mostly constrained already. So yeah, there we go. We made a very, very oblique change to the part, and you can see that changes the part. It's an automatic change. It's very nice and very modular in that way as well. So that concludes this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and hope you guys learned a lot of cool things, and I'll see you next time.